Good morning, everybody. Welcome back to Texas Reloading Room, and today is the day after my shooting outing at the outdoor range. And normally what I try to do is clean my firearms as soon as I finish shooting them if they warrant a cleaning. Unfortunately, yesterday I did not do that. The main reason was I wanted to go through and show you mainly the disassembly on this. This can cause a lot of people problems, and I have heard about it all the time. A lot of people praise the Mark IV for being so simple to take down, but I'm going to show you in this video today that the Mark III is really not that bad. It is a little bit more time consuming than a Mark IV would be, but in a half an hour, I'm not talking about a half an hour video, but in a half an hour we can take this down, clean it, and put it back together, and it'll be good as new. Let me get over to the bench. I want to show you everything that you're going to need to take one of these down. Alright, so what you can see here in front of you is everything that I'm going to use today for cleaning this. Obviously, first thing, you're going to need the firearm, and leave the magazine in it for the time being. You'll see why here in just a minute. Next thing, and you may not need this if your firearm is well broken in. This is brand new. That was the first time I've ever fired it. So I will need a soft hammer. This is basically a plastic tipped hammer. I use a 90-degree angled pick, and you can get away with a flathead screwdriver or whatever. I just like these. Another thing that I'm going to need, you don't need a screwdriver set. The reason I have this out here is because I'm going to use this as a punch. If you have a brass punch, that's even better, but it's not. This is not going to damage anything on my firearm, so I'm not worried about it. 22 caliber bore snake. If you don't have a bore snake, you can use a brush and a rod or whatever. Something to scrub the bore out. Shop towels, never a bad thing to have. And a toothbrush, rim oil, and I use Frog Lube CLP to lubricate my parts. Whatever lube that you use is fine. Anyway, let's go ahead and explain now exactly how this needs to be done. Okay, so first thing you want to do, rack it open, look in there, make sure it's clear. As you guys can see, this is clear. Alright, now we're going to close the bolt, point it in a safe direction, squeeze the trigger. That is why you need the magazine in. This has a magazine disconnect in it. And normally on a 22 you would not want to dry fire it, but in this case you have to take it apart. So after you point in a safe direction, dry fire it, take your magazine out, and the next thing you want to do, take your pick or whatever, and right back here on this you want to lift that mainspring housing up just like that. And on some firearms you can just pull this out. On mine I'm actually going to have to tap on it. So being careful not to hit the rear sight, and take that just like that. And here's where I use the punch. So on the top piece right there, just going to rest it, give it a few gentle taps, and it should come right out. There we go. So now you can lay this aside. Do not lose it. Makes your firearm work. And theoretically now we can just pull the bolt out. If the bolt won't come out like this, just make sure that your hammer is going to be in the proper position here. And what happens, I don't know if you can see it, but right in the center there's a little black hammer strut, and it's binding up on that little pin that goes across. So what we need to do is put my pick in there and just kind of free that pin. And now that it's free, what I'm going to do is rotate it this way so that the hammer can fall properly, and we take the bolt out. Now, one optional step on the bolt here, you can take the recoil spring off just like that. It's really simple. That's as far as we're going to take the bolt down. Next, what you can do, and this next step is entirely optional, but I'm going to show you anyway. These two pieces here, the frame and the barrel, they can be separated. Now this is a brand new firearm, so it's going to take a considerable pounding to get it off, and that's another reason that I have this. So, a couple of options here. You can, normally what you do if it's easy, you just take your grip and pull your barrel forward and it will come right off. You see, mine won't do that. So I can hold the barrel here and tap on that, or I can hold the grip and tap on that. Just make sure that you've got it hovering over a soft surface when it finally does come apart. Just like that. Now I've got my two pieces. If you fire it a lot between each cleaning, this will get fairly dirty. It's easy enough that I can just take a towel really quick and wipe it down. One of the things that I do always recommend is to take something and run it through your magazine well, just to make sure there's nothing in there, because a magazine well can get dirty. But our main priority today is going to be this and the bolt. So what I'm going to do is take my rim oil, spray the breech face nice and easy, and then I'm going to spray the crown, and I'll give the crown a light little scrub off there. Nothing major, just enough to ensure that it's clean. And another thing that comes in handy with the pick is that little edge right there. It's really easy to clean with a pick. Go ahead and tear off one of my towels here. And wipe the crown off. And I probably only put about 180 rounds through this thing yesterday, but you can tell it's pretty dirty. 22 long rifle is very dirty to begin with. So anyway, the next thing I'm going to do, I'm cleaning with the brush the actual insides of the bolt and chambering assembly here. So scrub that nice and good, and then this is where the towel is going to be important. You want to make sure that all that junk you scrubbed around is gone. So whatever method you find is the best to remove your excess junk, go for it. I'm not going to try to tell you exactly what you should do. Each person has their own cleaning methods, and I support that fully. Normally I use an ultrasonic cleaner. I think you guys know that, but it never hurts to know how to clean your firearms by hand. Okay? And on the really small stuff like this, you can use Q-tips or whatever. I actually don't think I have mine out here with me, but let me go grab some real quick and I'll be right back. Alright, I got my Q-tips. Now they make some longer ones called cottontails. I have a bag, but I don't know where they are right now. Anyway, I'm just going to use the Q-tip to get into the small little cracks that I couldn't get the cloth into and clean it. It doesn't have to be perfect, but get as much off as you can. And once again, you might need a pick to go in there and scrape a little corner. Alright. That looks good to me. Next thing we'll do, take our brush or our snake or whatever and just run it through the bore. I almost always run mine through at least twice. Usually everything gets good and done after the first one, but the second time around will just make sure of that. And I highly recommend picking some of these up. If you have not used one before, I'll just tell you right now, they're invaluable. Basically, in the amount of time it takes you to run it through the bore once or twice, you've done the same thing that a back and forth job with 3 different brushes would do. So, next step here, let's get on our spring. Really the only part of this that gets dirty is right here where it's at near the bolt face, so you can usually just wipe that off. It might be caked on a little bit, so it never hurts to have the brush. And then wipe it off a little bit. That's good. So next step, bolt face. What I'm going to do, a little bit of rim oil, my brush, scrub the guides there on the bottom, get after the bolt face. And if you have an air compressor, that's even better. Just take your air nozzle and spray off whenever you're done, and whatever's remaining can act as a lubricant. I don't have an air compressor, so this is what we're doing. Now this is easy to clean. I have seen some firearms that get so neglected and uncleaned after so many shootings that parts want to stick together just from the carbon buildup. I highly caution against that, because then you need different chemicals that are harsher. Alright, put our spring back in. We're going to go over the reassembly now. So put that back in there, and then up here just make sure that nestles in just like that. And you can see I use my pick for just about everything. Anyway, so before we put this down, let's go ahead and put a little bit of lubricant on it. And I usually just lubricate lightly the entire body of the bolt. And make sure that you put some on the spring. And right down here where it contacts the hammer. Alright, now we can set that aside. Really, it's the only part of this thing that needs to be lubricated, so we're good on that. Next step is going to be putting these 2 pieces back together. So as you can see here, there's a little hook that hooks on here, so we need to position that just right. And once again, if it's tight like mine, you're not going to be able to seat it by hand. So I'm going to hold it just like that and tap on the back of my frame. And you can really quickly look through those holes and see if they're lined up. Let me see if I can get a good angle for you. Yeah, there you go. It's not hard to tell if those are lined up anyway. That should be just about right. So the next thing that we're going to do, you want to make sure at this point that your hammer is laying flat so you can reinsert your bolt. And it may take a little bit of playing around with. Alright, the next step, and you might be able to get away without doing this, but insert the magazine, squeeze the trigger, and here's where things get a little bit tricky. You can see the hammer back here. You want to make sure that it's as far forward as it can possibly go. Now, I don't know if you can see that. That is not as far forward as it can go. If we try to put the mainspring housing back in here right now, it will jam up. And the number one way you can tell is that you won't be able to push the mainspring all the way down. So what we need to do is wiggle around a little bit and see if we can't get that hammer to go in there all the way. And it can be a little bit finicky at times. Usually, if you hold the trigger and play around in there a little bit, it'll go right in. And if you guys can see that, it's much deeper in there now. So we can drop the mag or leave the mag in. It does not matter, at least not in my experience. Take your mainspring housing just like this, and carefully reinsert your rod. Okay? And sometimes they won't do that. You might have to tap right here a little bit to get it go all the way in, but you want it to be just like that. Now, the next step, I'm going to turn it upside down, and you're going to look inside of here, and you can see that black hammer strut we were talking about earlier. That needs to line up with the groove right here. So mine is lined up. I can just fold it right in there and lock it in place. Easy test. Magazine's still in. Pull the bolt back, it'll lock. Take the mag out. If the bolt will move freely and the lock works right here, you're golden. You've got it back together. If for some reason there's an issue that you're having with this particular reassembly or disassembly, please let me know down in the comments box below. I have a considerable amount of experience with this firearm, and I went through probably every single problem that you guys are going through before I finally figured out exactly what needs to happen when we work with these. So I'll be more than happy to help you out if you're having an issue. But thanks for watching, guys. I hope you learned something today. I know these guns can be a little bit scary to somebody at first, but they're really not that bad. And if I wasn't sitting there and explaining and showing you every step, it'd probably take me 2 minutes to put one of these back together, tops. Anyway, like I said, thank you for watching. My name is Justin, and I'll see you in the next video.